We're going to start off by identifying where we're going to be installing this bracket. We're going to use the two upper head bolts here and then also this water pump boss right there. We're going to start off by doing a little pre-assembly on this front plate here. Take your 100mm bolt and slide it through just like so. You have 3 tubes of the same length. Put it in there just like that, and then this goes in here, and we're going to capture that with a 10mm nut. This will just kind of hold things together while we're doing the rest of the assembly. Should look just like that. We're going to continue the pre-assembly before we actually mount it up. We're going to take one of our medium length bolts here and take the spacer, slide it in just like so. There, and then we're going to take our 140mm with our last tube of equal length, insert it there. Now for this step here, this actually takes a split tube and a spacer there, so we get the assembly going like that, followed by the water pump brace, and then the tube with the dot on it. Slides just in there, just like that. All right, so now we have this assembly that looks like this. We're going to take the 2 medium length spacers, place them there, and now we are ready to mount it onto the engine cylinder. We have our bracket assembly ready to put onto the 2 cylinder head bolts here. There'll be the 2 spacered units there, and we're just going to get these started out. We're going to leave things pretty loose as we go. Just want to get it to a little less than finger tight. Now we'll install the tube and spacer here. It's the last, we'll make sure that this lip right here, you get the tube nice and set down so it's not cattywampus on there. Once again, just take it down to finger tight. And we'll tighten these up just a little bit more, and we're ready to install the compressor. Before we install the compressor, I want to draw your attention to this right here. This is actually a sleeve that slides in and out, and that will slide in to meet up to the back of the bracket. But to start with here, we want to make sure that this is flush, so if it's pushed in a little bit, just tap it back out, and we're going to install it now. Helpful little tip, when you're installing this, go ahead and put the back bolt in first, like that, and then come around to the front. Just get it threaded in there where it'll start. That way it takes the weight of the compressor as you rotate it up, and it'll hold it in place while you get the 3rd bolt started. Once again, we're going to take these down to finger tight. We don't want them too tight because we're getting ready to go through a torque process. We're ready to go through a torque sequence here. We're going to start with the head bolt here, followed by this head bolt, the water pump bolt, and then finally in this sequence, this bolt right here. These are 10mm bolts. So we're going to torque them to 37 foot-pounds. We want to lift up on the compressor to take all the slack out while we're torquing this down to start with. It's sometimes helpful to have a buddy. Now we're taking all the slack out in the same direction, so that should avoid all binding. Binding will be an issue if you just let the compressor hang down. Now I've got these 3 torqued. We're coming here, get your 15mm box end here, drop it down below. Now, what we've done is we've squared the bracket to the front of the cylinder head. What we need to do next, torque this and square the compressor to the bracket. So one thing I want you to do is that bolt that's in the back, I want you to take it and wiggle it and make sure that it isn't bound up. That'll ensure that these 2 plates are in the correct relationship, and we're going to come in here and torque this bolt here, 15 foot-pounds on our 8mm bolts, and then the same back here. We'll go ahead and add that 8mm nut. But before we torque this down, we want to take a look and make sure that our gap is okay. There are 2 main methods in order to make sure that this sleeve here is pressed up properly against this, because we also don't want it pressed in so much that this flexes, and we don't want it in a gap because the 8mm bolt isn't enough. You can take your feeler gauge here and run it in there, and as you can see here, we're actually pretty good. Second, if you don't have one of those handy, you can take a flashlight, shine it up there, and kind of give you a visual of what's going on. But like I said, we're pretty good here. We're going to take our bolt and nut and torque this down to 15 foot-pounds. We're ready now to install the idler. Here, take our 12mm bolt, slide it in from behind, our idler mount, tensioner pulley, 12mm nut. Now, this is 12mm, so we will be using 50 foot-pounds. We're now ready to install the tensioner. I want to draw your attention into this locating pin right here. It's going to go right in that slot there. So we're going to go ahead and pull out that 140mm bolt, slide it into the tensioner, slide it back through the assembly, get it on the locating pin, capture it with the 10mm nut in the back to a 10mm, so 37 foot-pounds. The next step is we're going to determine what belt we need. So on ours, we're using our alt power steering bracket with our 06 5.5-inch pulley pump, PowerMaster small case alternator. So we're going to go ahead, and one of the pro tips I'll pass along is, see how easily that belt went on, sliding it over that bell. You don't want to try to be putting it over a grooved pulley or anything like that, and the tensioner's a hassle. So try to leave the smoothest pulley for last, and that'll help you along. Now that we have the belt installed, before you run it at all, I want you to take a look at the maximum and minimum marks right here. This acts as a center line, so that'll tell you how far it is in its travel. We want something that's a little bit on the tighter end, so as this belt runs, it stretches a little bit, it takes a set, it's going to effectively lengthen. And so we want something that's going to be in good operating condition when it gets there. So before you run it, you'll have the opportunity to go back to the parts store, get one that's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. We do our best to give you a great recommendation, but if that's not quite right, in the real world application, we have a belt chart on the website that'll get you what you need.